Well, you realize that we scientists underestimated the sophistication of the human brain.
When it comes to the value you bring to your work or in life, your most vital skill, your greatest ability as a human being, is your ability to think critically. Join us as we point out how our brains tend to lead us down some bad paths and what you can do to take control and get right.
Brain Profits, are you ready?
Yep.
Then let's start the show.
Sitting on your shoulders is the most complex object in the known universe.
Welcome back to another episode of the Brain Profits. You're here with myself, Doug Mapp, cognitive development professional, entrepreneur, and CEO of a couple of different companies, Think Up primarily, and then I helping out running a Learning RX down here in Knoxville, Tennessee. And we're here also with the Dr. Philippe. What's up, man?
Going on? I'm Dr. Philippe Dion, board certified neurologist, author of the book Neuroplasticity, Your Brain's Superpower, creator of the online course Take Charge of Your Brain. Happy New Year!
Happy New Year to you. How's it going over there in New York?
Good, man. It's not as cold as it normally is this time of year, so that's good.
Yeah, global warming. You can thank for that, I think. Maybe we'll let the people debate on that one if they want. But
things down in
Tennessee. Yeah, no, it's a little bit warmer here than normal too. It's nice though. The Christmas holiday season went well, kind of well. Wife had that back surgery, so that has been putting a lot of strain on the dad resources of what we can do, because normally you just think about just taking care of the kids, but now you got to take care of the kids and the wife, which makes it like taking care of not just taking care of the kids, but somebody who really needs your hands and feet to get other things done. So that's been a little bit more of a challenge than I thought it would be initially, but she's gonna recover and it's gonna be okay.
Yeah, so, she's recovering. That's what's most important, right?
That's for sure. You learn a lot about all the different types of drugs or limited drugs that we have that help certain problems. When you're like, oh, what about, can't you prescribe? Nope, they don't have something like that. That's not what these type of medicines do these days, at least not for those type of problems. The ones that deal with your spinal cord or your spinal column and then your nerves. Very interesting. Different world out there for that type of stuff. But good stuff. Anyways, but let's jump into it, man. We know the world's been talking about, at least here in the States, the NFL and dealing with Damar Hamlin, who went down in the middle of the game, at the very beginning of the game, went down due to a cardiac arrest. Now, folks, we normally deal with the brain, but in this particular sense, I'm sure the brain has something to do with it, but there's a lot of people that probably aren't aware of what exactly is cardiac arrest. Myself is to include in that. So we're going to talk to Dr. Philippe on this one and kind of deal with what is cardiac arrest, what did he experience, and then what just in general what may pop up from that particular conversation, and get get us up on game on understanding certain medical terms that are just thrown around really easy in this world. So, Doc, what's cardiac arrest?
Yeah, so look, cardiac arrest and the brain are very intimately related, because when somebody has a cardiac arrest, right, if you get that heart started up again, what you're worried about now is, well, did the brain not get enough blood flow for a period of time? So the good news is with Damar Hamlin, the news out today is that he was extubated last night. So they took the breathing tube out. He's able to communicate. He looks like his brain function is completely intact. So that is really, really good. Wow. But cardiac arrest is different from a heart attack.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of people may not realize that. But with a cardiac arrest, essentially your heart just stops. Okay. With a heart attack, a part of your heart dies because a part of it does not get enough blood flow in that moment. Usually, like, there's a clot that blocks off a blood vessel, so that part of the heart doesn't get enough blood flow and it dies. So that's a heart attack. But with cardiac arrest, your heart stops. And so what happened to Damar Hamlin on the football field the other day is that his heart stopped. Now we can debate why his heart stopped, right? Whether it was, a lot of people are saying it's the hit that he took. That's very possible. You take a hit to the chest. It's certainly possible that that can cause, sort of an arrhythmia of your hearts or an abnormal heart rhythm, and that causes your heart to stop. But that's essentially what happened with him the other day.
Oh, that's interesting, man. I didn't know that with a cardiac arrest that it's a direct stoppage of the heart. I thought it was like, oh, they just fancy word for heart attack. So to
Now, the
know the
fancy word
difference.
for heart attack is myocardial infarction.
Oh,
That's the
infarction.
fancy word.
Okay.
Yeah,
Nobody
yeah.
says that either.
Yeah. So it's basically, a heart attack is basically what happens to the brain when there's a stroke. There's a clot that blocks off the flow of blood to a particular part of the brain that
Right.
causes that part of the brain to die.
Mhm.
Right. And so essentially, a heart attack is a clot blocks off the flow of blood to a particular part of the heart, causes that part of the heart muscle to die.
So from a standpoint of the cardiac arrest, there's nothing you could really do to kind of you know, make sure that doesn't happen. Is there? Is that
Well,
so? Is it so?
cardiac.
Or is it so random? There's that's my question. Is it so random that there is it's kind of up to choice on that happening?
No, nothing is random, right? Look, like I said, we could debate what happened to Damar Hamlin, but the
Right.
reality is that he took a hit or he went, to tackle somebody, but you could see that there was some kind of impact to the chest, right? He got up, but then his heart stopped, so he collapsed to the ground, right? And they had to perform CPR and to get that heart started up again, right? And get him to the hospital. One, to make sure that that heart kept on going, but also to do everything that they could to make sure that there was no long-term effects, especially neurological effects.
Right. Hey, did you by chance know if they dealt with any or used a defibrillator to help him get his heart started, or did they just do the
Well,
pumps?
some of the reports out was that they did use a defibrillator, but that I'm not 100% sure of.
Yeah, because I didn't
But
know how easy.
kudos to the medical staff there
Right.
who started CPR on the field, got his heart started, got his pulse back. Otherwise, we'd be having a very different conversation today. Instead of saying, look, he looks like he's recovering and he's doing well, the conversation would be completely different. So that medical staff, that training staff did an amazing job on the spot in a pressure-filled situation, which is always stressful when somebody has a cardiac arrest. Trust me, I've been in the hospital working on people who have had a cardiac arrest. So that's stressful enough. But then you are also doing it in the middle of a stadium with everybody in the stadium watching, right? On national TV, with the eyes of at least the country watching. And you were able to perform your job and do what you're trained to do in such a phenomenal way that you were able to essentially bring this guy back to life.
Yeah, I think most people probably don't realize that the cognitive load this guy was probably under at that point in time. It's not some dealing with something he didn't expect to have to deal with, and then do it at a high level. So yeah, kudos, shout out to
Yeah,
the
so
gentleman that did that.
certainly he is or the staff in general, but I think they talk about one guy in particular. He is the hero of this story.
Right. Well, shout outs and prayers up to Damar. And we hope him a speedy recovery as he continues to, kind of recover from this issue, and hopefully he gets back. We'll see what happens. We'll continue to follow the story. But let's moving on. There's been a lot of stuff kind of to close out last year that popped up that I think that we should be dealing with to a certain degree. And one of the biggest things that came out of last year was a new AI that I know a lot of people are talking about it, and we got to talk about it too, because it's going to affect a generation, if not more than a generation of people, as it continues to, build out. And that is ChatGPT. And I don't know how much you've heard about it, Philippe. What do you know about the AI that can write papers for your kids, solve complex problems? You started off, ended last year talking about, posting about the AI pictures that it kind of gave you. That's like the other half of what this super robust AI can do. So did you get a chance to look at the work it can do for you.
I mean, it's just based on what you're telling me that it can do for you.
Yeah,
So
no,
well,
it can
look,
do a
I
lot.
think there are always challenges with any new technology, right? And certainly, I think we have to be careful with how we use technology, right?
Right.
Because in a lot of ways, technology does dumb us down, right? We don't have to use our cognitive skills. We don't have to use our brains in the same way. And we see this happen all the time, right? So, a new AI feature that can essentially answer any question that you have or write papers for you, yeah, that's going to be a problem, right? Because that's going to now, kids are not going to have to think in the same way, right? They're not going to have to think at all. And that's going to be a significant challenge.
If you haven't heard of GPT is about this.
ChatGPT is therefore a way of prompting an AI to solve or answer a question or a prompt in a human-like manner, very different from anything else we've seen before. And this can sound scary, very scary, especially to organizations like Stack Overflow, which pride themselves on solving problems with human-related answers. They've actually gone as far as banning ChatGPT out from their systems. This is because they want to build a level of trust on there. And if people simply copy-paste answers from GPT without any references, that might break that level of trust. This is
Right, so there you have it. This AI, Chat GPT, can solve a whole lot of things for a whole lot of people. And it really takes thinking off of our plates.
Well, I mean, it looks like it's like Google to the next level, right?
Yeah, to some
In
degree,
some ways.
but at a really high level, though. Write a paper for me, fix my code, write code. It could do so much that from an educational standpoint, like you said before, if you don't have to think about a thing, your cognitive resources won't ever get taxed in order to grow even further. So this
Yeah,
could
but I
have some
feel like this.
serious implications.
Yeah, but I feel like this is where we've been moving towards, right? As a society. I mean, think about, when we were kids, if we had to write a paper, like you had to go to the library, you had to get books, you had to
Yeah,
go through the books, you had to
and
know
learn.
which books you wanted to get, right?
Mhm.
Now, I mean, you just Google information. A lot of people, I'm sure, must copy and paste,
Oh, for
right?
a ton. So here's the
Yeah.
thing that I think is going to do, or that is where it's going to hurt us, how it's going to hurt us at the end of the day. Because a lot of things that we're trying to solve for each other, even what we try to solve is we're trying to help answer questions for other people by asking the right questions. But if you don't practice asking the right questions because you don't know enough, right? You won't ever get around to asking the right question. And
Yeah.
that's where I think the AI is going to fail. It doesn't know what to ask to go in order to provide you with a great answer. It's just answering questions. So the further, so it's just answering questions based on what you provide. But the further down the line that we get, where we don't know enough about a situation to ask the right question, right? Is the answer that we're going to start going with is going to be, it's going to be limited by our inability to ask good questions. And actually, there's a notion that, hey, you could tell how intelligent somebody is by uh, how well the questions are formed, right? And so, if we're not forming great questions
Yeah.
as we continue to elevate up, how is this going to affect us as a whole? And I think it's going to affect us as a whole a lot, because what's going to happen when they start trying to use chat language, like when you text people, that all the quick code stuff, to these AIs who where we barely type the language anymore. We're just throwing out mainly, what do you call it,
Like
sub
acronyms and stuff.
yeah, acronyms and stuff, but even slang language, our language even starts to die off.
Yeah, I mean, I use full language when it's funny. I was talking to somebody about this the other day.
Mhm.
And when texting and social media first became a thing, one of the things that it showed you is which one of your friends had really poor language skills, right?
Mm, never thought about that,
um,
but keep going.
huh?
I said I
And
never thought
now,
about that, but keep going.
and now, and I don't know if it's pure laziness, but people do not type out full words. They essentially every week it seems like somebody's making up something new that you have to try to decipher what they're saying in a text, right? And then you hope that they don't actually communicate this way face to face.
Now you'd hope.
You hope, but that's not that may not necessarily be the case.
Nah, the kids definitely. If you listen to, I have an 18-year-old, so when you listen to him talk, and him and his friends, they do use some of that language, or that shorthand language. They use it in real talk, which is wild. What about your kids? They're younger than my son, so how are they doing? How are they talking?
Well, they don't have phones, so they don't
Oh,
text. They're not on social media.
what? You not letting them TikTok?
No, dude, I'm right now in a battle, just making sure that they're not on their games enough,
Oh,
right?
you don't let
And
them.
then when they're on their games, if they're engaging in the chat feature, like I need to be able to hear what's being said.
Not to switch it too far, but so with this, the way the movement of the world's going, and they have these new e-leagues, right? So the sport is now e-leagues. Are you gonna let your kids?
Yeah.
You support your kids being e-league professionals?
I mean, if
How you
that's what
gonna?
they want to do, but I'd prefer them actually being physically active, right? Like instead of sitting down and playing some game,
Yeah,
you
no, but
know.
it's gonna be hard to be a professional if you don't give them let them put in them hours. What did
Well,
they say about mastery? Takes how many hours? 10,000 hours to master a particular thing?
I mean that's what they say.
Yeah, that's what they
I don't
say.
know. I
So,
don't know how
so, you're
true
not,
that
so,
is, but
so,
that's
so
what
you're
they
not gonna
say.
let your kids. You're like, I'm not gonna let them spend $10,000 on my while I'm watching them. 10,000 hours.
Definitely not. Like it's funny because they've been with me like since yesterday. They'll be with me this weekend. I mean, they're
Right.
always with me, and I'm always kind of like, all right, what do I need to do to keep them busy enough that they're not on these games, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've been strategizing that for the last couple of days for this weekend.
So what you got going? What do you guys? Can you fill us in on give us some preview of what you're
um,
gonna plan
so
on?
if it's nice enough, we'll definitely go out, play some basketball, or do something physically active.
Mm-hmm.
Getting the haircuts in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
The afternoon, they've got their music. In the evening, my son is getting his hair relocked because he's got dreads.
Okay.
Right. So essentially, we've got stuff planned throughout the day where they can't just sit in front
Other
of
system.
a TV.
So you're not trying to pick up the sticks with them and then become like a Rocket League
No,
platinum.
no, no,
No, you're not
no.
trying.
But I will say, going back to what you had mentioned about questions, when I was in medical school and I was doing a rotation at Columbia,
Mm-hmm.
at New York Presbyterian Columbia, and so I was doing that rotation with some other students from different Ivy League institutions, like Harvard and Yale. And one of the things that I realized, the difference between kids who go to Ivy League schools and kids who don't, it's not that the kids that go to Ivy League schools are any smarter, because they're not. But what those kids are willing to do in Ivy League schools is ask questions.
Yeah.
Like they're not, they're not afraid to ask questions. They don't have any self-confidence issues where they're like, oh, I don't want to seem stupid. I don't want to seem wrong. These kids from like Harvard and like they did not give a damn. Even if you looked at them like, how do you not know the answer to that question? They would ask questions. And so I do think, to your point, questions are incredibly powerful. And one of the things that I see all the time when I'm seeing patients, right? So I'll explain to them what's going on. And I will say, do you have any questions for me? 90% of the time, the patient will say, no, I don't even know what to ask. Right. So
Yeah.
to your point, if you don't know enough to even ask a question, that is problematic.
Yeah, it's gonna affect our critical reasoning. It's gonna affect our ability to improve our executive function. Period. If we're turning over the ability to learn to something else. And there's other things that we can do, but it's the way that we've been advancing of studying and understanding knowledge and how things relate, it's been a big deal. And if we stop in our process of that, I think it's gonna have some pretty dire or cascading effects. So we'll
Yeah.
see though. We have to
But
follow
I
this
think we
closely.
also just need to adapt and look at new ways of learning. Right?
Yeah,
Because for me, learning is not sitting in a school for 6 to 8 hours and having somebody spit stuff out at you that may or may not be relevant. Right. Like my son said to me the other day, like, why do we even need to know anything about history? You know, I was like, yes, you don't need to know anything about history. Like they say, oh, you want to learn history so you don't repeat the past, but we see people repeat the past all the time. And the history that they learn in school is from one person's perspective or one group's perspective. It's not the universal truth in any kind of way, right? And unless you're going to be a historian, you're not going to use it much in your daily life. So, and so I do think that we need to approach learning differently, just in general, whether it's because our school systems are kind of archaic, or whether it's because we've got new technology that's going to influence that. We just need to figure out really great ways to learn.
Yeah, no, I think our understanding on the theory of intelligence is going to help us frame how we shift. And I think that the work that we do with Think Up and companies like the Inley Brain Fit Institute, we are going to be at the forefront of the shift, because we're focused on how your brain works and how you improve that versus just whatever arbitrary knowledge that somebody says you should know, you know?
Right.
And so how you use knowledge is what we want to, prime people for, the ability to use it in a fast way, recognize things and notice, how to make good decisions with the information that's been presented to you, so that you can then ask the right questions. And so it's going to require some layered thinking, but and layered thinking in general, right? And so, and approaches. And so we'll be able to help people in a way that currently most people kind of run from. But this is what happens. Most people run from the gym, but if you want to stay kind of relatively fit, you're going to have some type of physical regimen in order to do that. And so, we don't work on farms anymore. And this is kind of the new way of that. But I do want to recognize that, you can't use tools like this and expect it not to have a negative effect. Like going back to Cheetos and Snickers bars are technically food, but you're not going to be able to live on that healthily for a long time. Right.
Yeah.
So at least, and as a whole, maybe there may be like an outlier out there, but for the most part, most people won't be able to do that.
Yeah. And I think, the reality is that random bits of information that people may know is not power, right? So even when they talk about knowledge is not power. It's really how you use that information, how you use that knowledge that, that makes it powerful, right?
Yeah.
And so, I've got random bits of information in my head that are useless, as everybody else does, right? But people who can take something that they've learned and then especially use it to help other people or use it to solve problems, that's where the true power lies.
Right.
And the reality is that schools don't teach us to think that way. And technology doesn't necessarily teach us to think that way. But what technology can do sometimes is that it does connect us with people who potentially think in those ways, and that can influence the way that we think.
100%. Well, that's good, man. I think we hopefully turned the people onto something that they weren't really aware of, with looking at cardiac arrest, and then even moving into non-human stuff, which is the OpenAI's ChatGPT. But you've heard it here, maybe first or second, but at least that you can't just use the tool without improving another aspect of yourself in order to stay sharp on that thing. And so,
although when you mentioned this particular AI creating code, I'm like, man, AI creating code is basically AI creating AI, which is like
Terminator
beings
stuff.
are like we're starting our own demise. I mean, we've been killing ourselves off from the beginning of time. Jesus.
Well, I don't know. To me, I look at AIs don't need commerce. No real need for it. But anyways, all right. Well, hey, you guys heard it here. This was another episode of The Brain Prophets. Until next time.
All right, guys, take care.
Thank you for listening to The Brain Prophets. If anything we said in today's episode resonated with you, Let us know in the comment section. We'd love to hear what you think. And don't forget to rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform.